Right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, you guys. Welcome, you guys. I just want to start off with just the support of the showrunner brand, the sharing, the comments, the posts, the likes, being a part of this webinar. Honestly, this is the reason why I keep doing what I do is because of you guys. So every time I'm pumping out work and giving out these webinars, you guys are inspiring me. You're asking me questions and you're pushing me as a filmmaker as well. So anytime I can give you guys more insights and tips, I am here. So just thank you guys just for the continuous support before we get started. All right, so welcome to Decked Out, Building a Winning Pitch Deck. I want to start with why I decided to do this free webinar, mainly because I get a lot of emails with, hey, can you look at my pitch deck? Or as I'm an executive producer, or they are asking me to come on and help and assist them on projects. And sometimes I do notice a common theme when it comes to pitch decks in areas where the designer who is designing the pitch deck and also the director and the EP can improve on their pitch decks. Pitch decks are so important because they are the visual component that can actually sell your project with or without a script. So these decks are extremely vital to every project that you are a part of. I always recommend that people have one for every project. So welcome, and that is what inspired the Deck Out, Building a Winning Pitch Deck. So I'm gonna teach you guys how to craft decks that can convince, convert, means to get distribution deals and to get executive producers and studios also interested in your project to want to come on and be a part of it. All right, so welcome. My name is Michelle Daniel. I have been indie filmmaking for 15 years. I have produced my own content. George has helped me produce a lot of this content over the 15 years, about a total of 250 pieces from TV series, short films, docu-series. So very familiar in the indie space. One thing that I can say, what comes along with creating more projects is you learn more things along the way. You learn the things that work for you, and you also learn the things that did not work for you. And when you're a new filmmaker, sometimes it's really hard to navigate some of this big world of the filmmaking Hollywood space. So I spend majority of my time giving out insights and tips to independent filmmakers, just giving you some knowledge in the industry. I don't believe in gatekeeping. I think it's very important that everyone excels. And so that is where my showrunner brand comes from. And some of our films, including one that I did with George, has been nominated at some of the top festivals, ABFF, Bronze Lens. So it has been an amazing journey to be in this indie space and also to be sharing my knowledge with you guys. So again, thank you. And I also want to add that Coming to America is my favorite movie, the best movie, and that's what I watch almost 2 to 3 times a week. And I don't need anybody else coming for me. All right. All right. So today we have 2 special guests, George Cartwright, which is my mentor, guys. Thank you. And you guys help me welcome him and thank you, George, again for coming on board. Him and I go way back about 23 years when I first kind of started getting into this film space, and he has literally poured into me from film projects, from producing, from hearing my tears, my cries, everything over this filmmaking space, and to continuously supporting me. And if you are in the indie film space, I always recommend that you guys find you a mentor to be able to lead, guide, and just support you along this journey. So George will be here today helping out with Q&A and also with feedback on you guys' pitch decks and the questions, some questions that you guys may have. And I also have Christy coming on today. She's a screenwriter, and we're going to lean in towards how film treatments can help build out your pitch decks, especially if you are on the executive producer side, studio side, and you may not know exactly what to include. Well, having a screenwriter on your team to actually complete your treatment makes it so easy for your decks to get designed. So she will be on a little later. So excited about her. So today's agenda is that we are going to talk about pitch decks. I am going to go over with you guys core pitch decks and what are targeted pitch decks, because the two are extremely different, very important, and they speak to different audiences. We're going to talk a little bit about designing your pitch deck and give you some examples of some pitch decks that have been designed by designers, and we're going to do a pitch deck feedback. So some of you guys were able to send me over your pitch decks, and I have picked a couple to actually go over in real time in this webinar and just kind of help you be able to improve some areas so that your pitch deck can, again, be a monetizing document. You can monetize off your document. And then we're going to close with Q&A session. All right. Anything you want to add, George, before we get started?
Let's go. Hope
All
you got your pens out. Take notes.
Let's go. All right, guys. Let's talk about what is a pitch deck. A pitch deck is a presentation that you provide to your audience, and your audience varies. It varies from investors, film studios, potential partners, cast and crew. And it's an organized document to give an overview of your project. It is visually appealing, so I just want to point that out. And it is not your script. It is not a treatment, and we'll go over a few things. And it's not a lookbook, but a pitch deck is specifically to talk about your film project, who is involved in your project, and what is the goals of your project. It is actually your voice when you send over. Pretty much, if you were to speak to someone about your project, you would tell them what it is, what it's about, what is the budget, who you will want to be involved. And that is the same thing that a pitch deck does when you send it via email to investors or studios. So again, pitch decks is for investors, production company, and also potential partners. This is specifically who pitch decks are for. A lot of times, independent filmmakers get confused with pitch decks, lookbooks, and treatments. And I say that because I did get a few treatments emailed to me to actually review for this webinar. So I'm glad that I was able to put this on there. So I just kind of want to give you guys the quick difference of the pitch deck, a lookbook, and a treatment. So again, a pitch deck is for investors, it's for your production company, your key creatives, and it gives an overview of what your project is. A lookbook in the film space is used primarily for visual appeal. And usually that is for production designers, directors, potential cast members. And it's a mood board with visual images. Oftentimes the directors are the ones that actually create the lookbooks. So they have an idea of some shots, a style, and it's kind of given a feel and tone of what the project would visually look like. So oftentimes what I see in lookbooks are people putting logline and synopses into those lookbooks, and that is not exactly what they are for. So make sure you know who your audience are when you're creating certain documents in the film space. The second that always gets confused with pitch decks is a treatment. So a treatment pretty much is a detailed story outline that tells the information about your story, the log line, the synopsis, the key characters, the different acts that are involved. Sometimes people use treatments and Bibles, depending on if you're in a TV series space. But your treatments are for your directors, they're for your executive producers, and they're for your screenwriters. And most importantly, for this, they are for your designers to actually help you design the deck. Treatments usually don't have a lot of information as far as budget, distribution. And so those are some of the key differences when we're talking about a treatment. So remember, pitch deck are for investors. They are for potential partners. They are for anyone that you would like to be involved into your project that you're possibly hiring for grant applications. But a lookbook is the visual of what your film would look like. And oftentimes that is done by the director of the project. If a director is not attached, sometimes the executive producers will create a lookbook for grant purposes. And they're also for the art department to get a feel of how visually the project will look. Now, the treatment is for your screenwriters and your directors and your executive producers that actually outline the story in detail when it comes to how everything will unfold. And they usually, again, do not have information like budget, market, target audience, distribution. It's strictly about the story and its development. Okay. Now, when you're creating a core pitch deck, it's really important to understand what goes in the core of a pitch deck and what goes into target pitch decks. So the first one we will go over is your core pitch deck. And these are the things that should be included in your core pitch deck. You have a title page, and that is your first page. And your first page should have your name of your project, an image that represents your project, the name which is written by or created by that is involved in that project. A lot of people do include the logo on the project. I don't see a problem with that. Um, the next slide that you would need for your pitch deck will be your log line, which is 1 or 2 sentences about your actual film, your project. You want to include your synopsis on your pitch deck as well. And this will help the executive producer, studio, distribution company. Oh, hold on, guys. Hold on. I don't know what happened. Hold on. George, can you run through those while I fix this issue? I'm on synopsis.
All right. And so once your synopsis is the brief overview of the plot, covering any of the major events of the film and the development across the beginning, middle, and end, kind of the overview of how it will the story will go. Cool. All right, and then you have your the talent, your main characters, 2 to 5. They're I'm sure this will bring some questions as to whether or not, who you should put on there. That's always a question, and how many of the characters, depending on how many that you have. But do you have a brief description of the main characters, their traits, their motivations, and their roles? And then 2 to 5 supporting characters, which also kind of details the importance of the story and how they support the main narrative or the other characters. Now, again, it's not you don't want it to be character heavy. Every character doesn't have to be on there, or anybody that shows up in the film. Just the main ones and the supporting ones that help move the story forward. Then you want to include your acts. 3 acts typically. I'm sure we all understand that the vast majority of our films have 3 acts: Act 1, 2, and 3. The key events and turning points in each of those highlighting those acts that highlight the setup. What is the confrontation or the rub, or what's the conflict in there, and then what resolutions, along with any of the major turning points that are going to happen in the film as planned out by the script. And then comparables. What other films are similar to this? What other films are similar to this one? And what that is doing is helping people to those people that are reading it to particularly if they're in the film space, they've seen the vast majority of the films that give you this inspiration, and they can say it's similar to
Insecure.
Top Gun, and
Insecure
yeah,
power.
to Power, Power and something else. So then, they have a kind of an understanding of where you're coming from, and your your ideas for the film. The similarities of the films, their relevance to your project, the genre, the audience, and this is important. What are the success matrix? Remember that this is for investors and they are going to be looking for, how do I get my money back? What are the success matrix? Kind of how big is the audience for this film? Is it a niche project or is the audience large? Do you understand the audience? And this will help you to convey to your investors that you have the project dialed in, and that you have some ideas about and understand that investors' success is important in recouping their investment. You ready? You want to pick it up?
You got one more slide too. Go ahead.
Okay, the key creators, the short bios of the directors. That's important. The writer, people want to know who's attached to the project. Success in investors' minds often driven by who is attached, who is the director, who are the writers, the producers, obviously, and then emphasize any of the past successes of those key creators that are attached. And then obviously, because you want to, and you are asking them to get in touch with you, you definitely want to make sure that you include your phone number, your email, and any relevant social links, because that will start the deep dive for investors. It'll start that, particularly in your social links, so like who's, what you have out there. So make sure that you have that information on your pitch deck.
And you would be surprised. A lot of people do forget the contact information on the last slide. And I know you may think, well, if I sent an email, they may reply to that email, but sometimes your pitch decks are being forwarded around to person, and you do not want to miss opportunities. So that last slide is important to have your contact information, email, updated number on how they can get in contact with you. Also, let's just kind of piggyback just a little bit, George, because let's talk about the talent. I want to say this because oftentimes in pitch decks, the talent is confused with the actor's bios. So sometimes I'll see Gabrielle Union as a character that they would like to play, but it will either be the actress or the actress who's playing it, their talent and their resume, or they will put their actress face there and not Gabrielle Union's face. And so it's really important that when you're doing your talent, that the description is of your characters and not your actors' resumes, and that it is of the talent that you would like to see play that character. And then make sure those characters are as close to whatever character you are picking in the real world. Let's just say 50 Cent. You would not put him in a rom-com as one of the main actors, I versus a drama or a thriller. So this is not about like preference on actors. It's about who actually fits your characters. So as your investors are looking at your deck, they're actually putting together your project in their mind. They're seeing your log line. They're seeing the people that you would like to play these characters. And they actually are building this story about your project. So it's so important that you are staying as true to your story with the characters as possible. And that goes with the comps, just to say, George, I see a lot of people always, I see the same movie poster boards and pitch decks. And it's like you need a variety as well, because you have different box office numbers. And I think a lot of people don't know on some of the insecure episodes, they've spent a little over $1 million. And as an EP that knows that, that is just like, whoa, I'm honestly looking through your pitch deck, looking through your ideas that you have, seeing who your comps are, seeing what those numbers are, knowing what those numbers are for those series, and seeing how you are comparing them. So it's really important to do research, especially when you're doing your comps, because you want to make sure that you look as if you're getting comps that are as close to your project, even on budget, even if it's in the budget rim. So, you don't want to do a comp for some series that may take $3 million to shoot each episode. You know, as an EP in the studio, they're calculating what that will look like as far as investing. So make sure your comps are as close to being relatable and to your audience and what that budget would look like as possible. And another thing that I noticed with the key creatives is that um, you guys need to include the success. If you have directors or writers or screenwriters that have been nominated at festivals that films are streaming on Tubi, you want to include them into, you want to include that into your deck. As your producers in your studios are looking at your deck, they are looking at how big your talent is. They're looking at who do you know? They're looking at who do you have attached? Are your writers, are your associate producers known? Are they in Hollywood? So this is the key creatives is just a little time to brag. And I just want to say that because oftentimes, you know, especially with cover letters, you don't, but this is the time to really shine your light on your team and say, hey, we are a dope team. The only thing we need is the check. And that's pretty much where it comes to when it comes to the key creatives. Okay. And then also just make sure when you're using your images with your key creatives that either you guys have had a photo shoot where it is cohesive or you guys are picking images with your cast and crew that whether it has an all white background, all black background, you want to make sure your images are in sync and they're not like just sitting in a chair at a restaurant. Professional images are so important when you're putting out your key creatives. All right. All right, one thing that I want to talk about in a pitch deck, the core, sometimes people get confused on when to use the synopsis, if they should use the synopsis, if they should use the acts. And I also want to say pitch decks are really personal. It's no wrong or right way to do it. You just want to make sure it gets your storyline across to the investor. And you want to make sure it looks good, the quality, and everything is just cohesive. So one of the things when it comes to pitch decks is the synopsis varies based on if you're doing a feature film, short, or a series. And then also the acts. So on a feature film, oftentimes people do include the synopsis and the act for the feature film because the synopsis is just not enough to really digest what the actual film would be about. Versus a short film, you would not include, typically does not include a synopsis because it's short. It has pretty much a single narrative. And so the acts is very hard to kind of break down. And it seems like you're reaching if you start doing a synopsis and you start breaking down the acts for a short film. It's like, okay, we get the point. You pretty much didn't tell the entire story. Now, if you have like a 40 or 50-minute short film, I could possibly see why acts may be important. So again, just kind of keeping in mind your project. Every pitch deck is different. You're going to design them different and they're going to require different things. When it comes to a TV series on the pitch deck side, a lot of people do not, well, you're not supposed to include the actual acts. You are supposed to include the episodes overview and the seasons overview. So instead of creating your acts, you're actually breaking down the episodic part of it and then what your seasons will look like. And then I'll give you guys an example of each. You have anything else you want to add real quick, George?
Yeah, no, no, no. I was just saying it's more of an overview of your season, but yeah,
Okay.
good stuff.
So can you see the pitch deck?
We still see the slide of the acts versus synopsis. There you go.
All right. So I want to give you guys an example of what a feature film pitch deck will look like. So you open up with your cover page, and again, you have an image that really stands out to what your deck is about to be about. Definitely screams rom-com, especially with the color temperature. A lot of these things really matter, especially to executive producers like me. Studios, I am really anal when it comes to pitch decks. Like I like the color temperature, like the images, the fonts, everything to feel like this is a rom-com. So here's an example of a feature film for a rom-com. You have your opening slide, you have your log line with an image, and you have your synopsis that is here. And then we go into your key characters that will be a part of the project. Hey, Christy. And then you have your supporting characters that will be a part of your slide as well, your pitch deck. And in your feature film, you want to go into your acts so that as a producer is reading your project, and if they have gotten to this point, trust me, they're interested in your project. So this is your time to really kind of break down your acts and what is happening in each of those. And you can do it very creative. For this deck, we decided to kind of bullet point our acts, making it easy for our producers and studios to kind of figure out what is that they would like to read from the opening image, themes stated, setup. Again, you want to make sure that whoever is reading your deck, your audience, is able to really consume this entire deck that is very fun to read. So however you can make them consume it, wherever you want to put their eyes, that is extremely important to think about as well. And then after your acts, we have our comps here. And this is very interesting, George. So for the first time, I decided to do comps on a video on demand release versus theatrical. And the reason why on this actual deck I went with that is because video on demand release, budget, marketing money is completely different from the theatrical release of budget and marketing money. So again, these are things to think about when you are wanting to pitch to studios and investors. If you're thinking about doing a video on demand, then maybe that is the comps that you would like to include. That's kind of where we are in that space a little bit with like Amazon and Tubi and those places, that video on demand budget. But if you're leaning more towards that theatrical release, then you have comps. If you're open to both, you can include them like we did for this deck. And include that in there so that your investors or your studios know that you are open to either way, whether it's a theatrical release or a video on demand release. And then we have the key creatives. Oh, that's me. And then we have our closing image. So this is what a core pitch deck looks like. We have our log line, we have our synopsis, our characters, our comps, and our creatives. So this is specifically for the audience of investors, potential collaborators, people that you want to get excited about your project. All right. Oh. And next, I'm going to show you guys an example of a pitch deck for a series. We got action. All right, this is a series pitch deck, and Luke, he is a pitch deck designer, and I'll make sure that I send you guys his information and a recap for everyone. And he designs pitch decks for indie filmmakers. And so this is an example of a TV series deck. And again, your TV series deck is the same as a core deck, but now you're including what your episodes will, what will happen in your episodes and what will happen also in your seasons. So you come with the same title, you have your log line, you have your synopsis, and then you have your characters, which are your key characters, supporting characters. And here's the difference between the feature film is where you start to write out what your pilot episode is about, and then what would be included in however many episodes you have in your season. Brief descriptions. Remember, guys, as you are figuring out what to include into your pitch deck, You want to make sure you don't overwhelm your executive producers where you have 15, 16, 20 slides. You don't want to overwhelm them where you have 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. Know your audience. You're sending this off to Hollywood execs that are busy. They're reading on the go on their phone. So you want them to be able to consume your pitch deck in one. So again, just keep up with how many words you're using, your words choice, how many you're using in each, from your synopsis all the way into your episode or even your acts. And so you have the episode breakdown here. And then with TV series, what differs with them is that you go into your seasons. You want to let your investors, your studio companies know that, hey, this is just not a one season show. I do plan on having a season 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That way they can kind of see the bigger picture. They will know how much money that will possibly cost them. Producing a TV series is definitely different than producing a feature film budget wise, marketing wise as well. So it kind of just gives them a bigger perspective into how you plan on how your film plans on being shown to your audience, whether that's in one season, 2 season. And again, if you just have like a one season limited season series like Netflix, that is fine. But if you have one that would like to be ongoing, you want to list that here. Even if you don't know all of the events that will happen in each of the seasons, listing just brief descriptions of what you think will happen is so important. And then you have your comps and your closing page. All right, George, so that's the end of our slides. You have anything that you would like to add?
No, not at this time. I'm just taking down some of the questions that we have here. Let's get to Chris. Our guest, is she ready to come on?
Yeah, I can answer a question.
Oh, okay, cool. Let's take a couple questions. If this was a pitch for a series, would you break the seasons down into 3 acts? I think you answered that, but if you want to review it just real quick again. If this was a pitch for a series, would you break the season down into 3 acts?
No, you would just like this. Well, let me share the screen again. Instead of breaking your seasons, the acts down, you will actually break down each episode and what happens in that pilot episode, and then what happens in each episode of that season. So if you have 7 episodes in that season, then on your deck, you would be putting what is going on in each of those episodes instead of your acts.
Okay, staying right there. For the synopsis in a series or a TV show, is it usually done as 1 per season or for the whole series?
George, you went out on me. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. It says for staying in this same question synopsis there, in a TV for the synopsis in a TV show, is it usually done as 1 per season or for the whole series?
For the entire series. It would be for the entire series.
So I think we saw a series arc. As a writer, if you're planned out your series arc, where you're starting and ultimately where you're going and how the characters are going to be developed, and the story that you'll tell over the series, then that is something that you can put in there. Or as far as you've gone, if you plan for it to go 5 years, then what is that first year going to look like, and then possible directions for later in the series.
And also just listing out, I wouldn't recommend any more than 5 seasons.
Yeah.
Again, you're just trying to not consume that many slides, and also it's a bit it's a stretch after 5. Like,
It's a stretch.
it's a stretch. You have no idea what is going to happen, how they want to, how the studio will want to react to the audience that is out there. So again, the seasons that you're listing out, they're very general. You're not stuck to those ideas. And they actually should be a bit easier to kind of create than the episode breakdowns, I feel.
Right. Um, okay. If you are pitching, um, are there any noticeable, whoever asked the question, I'm sorry, I didn't catch this, but are there any noticeable differences for a doc pitch deck? I don't think I understand the question. Maybe you understand the question a little bit better than I do. Is that in terms of, are you asking that for format for the person that's asking that question, or whether it should be on a doc or a PDF
Oh,
or
hello. I'm talking about
okay.
documentary films. I make
Oh,
documentary
on a doc.
films.
Okay, for a
Yeah.
documentary. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, all
Uh-huh.
right, got you. So, what's the pitch deck look like for a documentary film?
So when it comes to doc and realities, pitch decks are very rare, more than common. And so I would just follow the same guideline as the core pitch deck and making sure that you are including what the documentary is actually going to be about. And usually that can be within your synopsis. And so the same with short films, they are more rare than common, but a lot of people use them, especially for fundraising, to work with investors on the raising of the project, whether they want to become EPs. So usually just having the synopsis there on the docs and short films are good enough. I know sometimes people do reality shows. So even if you had an arc of the reality of what you are expecting to happen in each episode and also each season and what is the end result, what can kind of help the drama, heighten, that is also what you can include on the reality side. So if you're on the reality side, I will follow more of the TV series format where you're kind of listing out everything that is happening in each episode. If you're on the documentary side, then lean towards the feature, just kind of minus out that act and just do the synopsis.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I hope I answered her question.
Yeah, I think so. Um, Do you ever use video in a pitch deck, and what section would that go in? Also, if you can also put with that, do you include proof of concept video links or anything like that in your pitch decks?
I do not, but that brings me to let's go into our targeted decks, because in some targeted decks they do have links for portfolios, showcasing that type of work, and so we can kind of segue into that. Okay, and then I'll come back and answer a few more questions.
Okay.
All right, so you guys, with your core pitch deck, what we just went over, they are good for talent agencies and managers. They're also good for potential collaborators, film festivals, and organizers. You can send your deck over to crowdfunding audience that want to know more about your project. You can send your core deck over to. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about targeted decks. And this will answer your question, George, on like links and different things to include into your decks. One thing I think is really important to know when you are creating your decks is that you must know who your audience is. Who are you sending this deck to, and what is it that you're trying to say to them? Your core pitch deck is for hiring cast and crew, letting them know more about your project. But do they really need to know about the investment deals? Do they really need to know about the distribution and the marketing plan? Does your key stylists and designers need to know about the supporting materials that you and your crew previously had? So that's why it's so important to make sure that your decks are targeted based off of who you are actually sending them to. So I just have a timeline for you guys just to kind of give you some examples. You would take your core deck that you already created, and based off of who you would talk to, you would incorporate new slides into that deck. So again, remember, you are forever changing out your slides. I know a lot of people like to have one deck and just send it off with all of that information, but it's not as wise to, versus who you are speaking to and what they are asking of you, that is what you specifically want to give to them. So when you're working with investors, they usually want to know a little bit about the market that you're trying to reach out, and what does that look like? And also they want to know about the return of investments. You know, how are they planning to get their money back? What is your budget for this project? I know sometimes I get a lot of core pitch decks and they have the financial projections in there, and you haven't necessarily asked me to be an EP. You've just asked me to review it and give you feedback. Now I'm being nosy, looking through your budget, now seeing where like your officers are going to be, and all of these extra things that distract me from what I originally am supposed to be doing. And that is getting to know your story. So this is why your audience is so important. If you're speaking to someone about a check, you do want to send a financial slide in there, which goes over your budget, how you're planning on getting money back from this project. And most importantly, that is because they want to know their return of investment. So having a financial projection slide is also very beneficial for investors. I do recommend having a distribution slide as well. A lot of investors are sometimes unfamiliar in the film space, and they want to know exactly what are you going to do with this project. You know, some of you guys may have distribution already set up. So that helps the investor, you know, feel as ease as if I donate, or I'm sorry, if I write you a check and invest into this project, that it already has distribution set up. So a distribution slide is very important to include when you're speaking with investors, whether you have a deal or not, because it also gives the tone of where you would like the project to land. And again, when you're dealing with investors and dealing with EPs, especially on this distribution slide, you don't know who knows who. So they may know. It happens all the time. I have a buddy over at Amazon. And so if you include that on your distribution strategy and it aligns together, these are how the things kind of work and start to happen for you. So when you're speaking to investors, market analysis slide, they're sometimes asked for just to kind of figure out how the success of the project will be, along with the financial projections. That usually can be a slide. And any investment details, just anything that you think an investor would like to know about. If they give you $100,000, how are they going to be getting their money back? That's ultimately what you're trying to convey in your pitch deck that is for your investors. Anything you would like to add to that, George? All right. So if you are sending your pitch deck to executive producers or studios, and the reason for this is some studios, executive producers are looking for projects to actually produce. Some studios will take your project, produce it, and become an EP on your project. So it's a little bit more information that they are actually interested in, along with the core pitch deck. For executive producers or studios, talent is a big. If you have an influencer, if you know someone, they will love to see that on that deck, especially if you have them locked in. Because for producers and studios, that rings that return, it rings that, you know, we have influencers or a celebrity to help us market. So talent is a really important slide if you're planning to hand it off to executive producers or studios. So make sure when you're doing it in your core pitch deck that it is attractive. I've seen a lot of people revamp their core pitch deck and make their executive producers and studios pitch deck a little bit more fancy. They brag a bit more because they want them to know, hey, we are a talented team and we have a talented cast and crew. It's really about how much effort you want to put into your pitch deck. Another slide to include with executive producers or studios that they may want or you may want to include is a timeline of your production. How long are you planning? How long is this project going to take to get done? If you're thinking about 6 months, you may be thinking about a year. This is extremely important, especially to indie producers who have a plate of projects. So the expectation of what is your plan to get this project done on your own before incorporating me is so important. EPs want to know that you have a plan for your production, or you have thought about some type of plan to actually get your project up and running so that they can align with you. And again, studios love distribution deals. If you have one, you want to add your distribution goals. And if your film is very unique and allows you to have a very unique marketing strategy, you want to include this into the deck as well, what your marketing strategy would be. Some decks may go off to sponsors for product placement. So you may have a marketing and promotion plan slide into your deck. Audience demographics, sometimes when it comes to sponsors and product placement, if they're going to be cutting you a check for your project, they want to know who is your target audience, who is your audience, how big of the audience that you have. So they really are interested into the demographics of the target audience. So you want to have that slide if you are speaking to sponsors and if you are speaking to businesses and brands about product placement. All right, another thing that sponsors and product placements can be really into are key creatives. They know that if they have a solid team, especially if they're directors, producers, are in Hollywood or have something streaming, that product placement is going to work for them, especially with the talent. Having product placement or having a Nike shirt on one of the influencers is important. So key creatives, talent, when it comes to product placement is so important because they're also trying to figure out how to monetize behind the scenes and also in front of the scenes. It has been opportunities where, you know, product placement companies send over clothes and cast and crew takes pictures and they use that as a part of the marketing for placement. So having your key creatives and talent, influencers, known people, that's just where we at, be a part of your deck helps with product placement. And then the last type of deck is your grant deck. And a lot of these decks speak about social impact. They want to know the timeline of your project. And again, this is where the supporting materials come in. A lot of grants, with you're working with businesses and organizations, they want to know that you and your crew are familiar with this area before they cut you a $10,000, $50,000 check. Who is on your team? What type of work has your crew previously produced? So having supporting materials when it comes to grant applications is vital. They really want to see that you have done something previously, and it gives them the confidence in cutting you guys a check before, if this is kind of like your first project. So any type of previous work, whether you were a PA, whether you were, the writer, the director, you can submit some type of work to show that you are very familiar with this film space. So you have your core decks and you have your targeted decks. What I do recommend is getting all of the slides that you would like to have be in your deck designed, and then therefore you are organizing your decks based off of who you are speaking to. Okay. All right, any questions before we go into, or anything you would like to add, George? We're going to do a feedback of some some pitch decks that were sent over. And so these are the 3 people that I picked to review their decks. And so we're just going to kind of talk about some of the areas where they can improve. But before we get there, George, do you have anything else you would like to add?
There are questions. One of the major questions that several people have asked is, will they get a recording of this, and are your slides available, or some version of your slides available?
So yes, the recording of this would be available for the 24 hours if you guys are here. So you can get it for free. If you missed it, you can catch it. I'll send out the link. After that, it'll be for a few dollars if you want to purchase it after the 24 hours. So make sure you check your emails and grab the link to go ahead and do the recap.
All right. And the type of pitch decks that you have used or that you talked about, is this the same format that you would use when you are presenting physically to investors? And then how does your time limit factor into that?
Say that again?
So is this the same pitch deck you would use when you are physically presenting? If you were those pitch fests that they have, is this the same type of pitch deck that you would use, or is it based on the time limit that you would have for some of your physical presentations?
A pitch deck.
Yeah, would you use this same one if like this one? Some you email, some pitch decks you can email, but what type of pitch deck would you use if you were presenting physically, if you were standing up doing a presentation?
I've seen it all. I've seen some people do pitch decks. They just kind of read it off, and it's the core pitch deck again, because you want to keep people invested into the story. When people are invested into the story, trust me, they are going to ask you for budget. They're going to start asking you questions once they are interested. The main goal is to snag them in this core pitch deck into your story. So I've seen people use the core pitch deck to actually pitch. A lot of people have really memorized their pitch deck, and so they're able to do the elevator pitch or just kind of really give a spiel about their pitch deck. I think it's about preference. I am not good at winging it, so I prefer to use my deck to guide me on those actual deck meetings.
I think you said something very important that probably needs to be highlighted, and that is there, like you have trailers for your projects that are 10 seconds, 30 seconds, at a minute, and then some other length. You need to have you need to have the ability to have a 10-second pitch, a 30-second, the elevator pitch, and then something that is a little bit longer. So that means that you know your project inside and out, and depending on who you're talking to, know which parts of your pitch to highlight. So those things are important.
Yeah, no, it's really important to know that, like you say, that deck, because sometimes you can't pull out your phone and be like, hey,
Yeah.
like, tell me now. And so you got to know it, and you got to know your time frame. If you got a minute, you better know what to say in that minute.
Exactly right.
All right. So we are looking at lost time. And this pitch deck came in from the director, Smith, and they had the executive producer, Sasha. All right. So, George, what do you think about this pitch deck based off of what we have spoke about today?
Do I need to go first? I'm sorry, I was trying to get some questions here. But
Okay.
yeah, I'll let me get these questions captured.
All right. So
Okay, sorry.
the first deck that I have chose to pick was Lost Time. And immediately when I look at this deck, it's a few things that I would love to suggest for improvement. One is the font. You have to be very strategic about your font choice. Having different fonts that are either hard to read, that are different. If I looking at this font off top, I can tell that it's about 2 to 3 different fonts that are in here. They're different colors. And so those are things that you really want to be cautious of when you're actually designing your deck. How are things looking? Are all of the colors cohesive? Are all of the fonts easy to read? Are all of the fonts the same color? Even in areas where some of the fonts may be white, are they blending in with the images? Are the images of quality? And so one of the first things here for improvement is to definitely change the font of this to make it pop out a bit more so that we can see lost time as well and who the actual film is by. If we're looking at the first image, we see that a film is by is faded into the board. And so small things like that does make it a bit difficult for EPs to our studios to really kind of get invested in. And so you want to make sure that you're paying close attention to those small things. Something else that I noticed or I would recommend with this deck are the images. I do feel like this story, just without, reading the synopsis, and the story feels like a very personal story. It does feel like these are personal images. And so this is what I feel before reading the synopsis is a very personal story. So that is important as well. If you have a personal story to tell, including personal images are key. If it's not a personal story, having images that are quality images that are the same color in the actual formatting of it will help make your story and your pitch deck more engaging, especially with images that people are very familiar with. cities that they know. Example, my Zoom background, you know, these help actually tell the story of your deck as well. If your film is shot in Atlanta, then having the Atlanta city on, on your deck or your first image is important too. So this feels like a very family story, which is not a problem. So just make sure that if it's not a family story, that you are not including personal images of you into your pitch deck. Sometimes that can be looked at as you're too connected to this story. And as an EP, it may be some challenges with some of the stories that may need to be adjusted for marketing or whatever reasons. Anything else you would like to add, George?
Just that if you make sure that your pitch deck looks connected, if that makes sense. And this goes back to having a good designer, so that it flows, it makes sense, that everything in there has a very specific purpose. If we look at this page right here, my question would be, what is the purpose of the building page? What's the purpose of that page? Does it have a purpose? And is it wasted space, right? And so, but it all needs to be connected and visually connected, so that where it is interesting and appealing, and you don't kind of lose your audience with too many pictures and too much kind of stuff, and too many sizes of fonts and these kind of things, and overall, just connected wovenness to your pitch deck. So
Yeah, and one of the things that I would like to add too, that is so important when it comes to this deck, when it comes to meet the crew, this is a time where you want to
add.
decide who is on your team, what does your crew do, what are their accomplishments, and so make sure in you guys' decks that you are highlighting your crew's success, because that matters when you're speaking to investors and studios. Okay. Some things in this deck, like notes from the director, just depending on who this deck is for, the core pitch deck, that would not be needed, because again, it's taking us away from this story. It's more slides that are about from the director, and this is our comp side. And so we're leaning towards looking at all of the images that are not as cohesive and forgetting to read the actual story and the synopsis and what the characters are about. And then so we lose it. And then so therefore, that's where we are with the deck. You want it to be engaging. You want, even on this character slide, I want to be able to know which character is who. And here I don't know that. Okay, so these are some things to think about when you are designing your slide. I actually really love this image though, George, if it really relates to the film. I think this is an image that you would use for a deck, this pizza shop. All right, well, thank you for that. And we'll get our next one. Hold on. Jesus. Oh, there we go. And then we got two more decks, and then we're gonna have Christy join us. She is patiently waiting. I don't know where my. All right, George, I'll let you take this one away.
Okay.
It's loading. There we go.
All right, there we go. Yeah, so let's scroll through it real quick and just look at, for instance, the interconnectedness, the fonts that they're using. The fonts are nice and large. They have their inspiration, and that kind of thing. And just so that we can get an overall feel of what the deck looks like, what the deck feels like.
So one of the things that I do want to point out with this deck, and just when you are creating decks, is like listing out the genre should not be listed. We actually should be able to fill whatever
Yes.
genre it is in the deck. And so I know, you know, these small things really matter to EPs. It really matters to studios. It really builds the connection of who is the writer, who is the person behind this. Are they giving us a clear message? Why do they feel that they need to let us know the genre? And it also makes me start to feel that the script will also have a lot of hand holding. So it's a lot of things to really take into consideration when listing the genre. You want your pitch deck to feel, you want your
Somebody's mic is open.
you want your pitch deck to feel whatever the genre is. One of the other things I noticed on the second line, and I actually love this first image. Actually, I was like, oh, this feels like a dope project. I was so intrigued. I thought having these two young ladies positioned here was just a pop that was needed. So I really did appreciate that. When I got into the log line, I feel like it fades out a little bit in the background. And again, you want every word, you want everything that you want to say about your project to be read and to be felt. And so just making sure that the images that you are picking behind some of your fonts, you know, that it's either darker if you're using, well, actually will be lighter if you're using this darker fonts, and vice versa. You want it to be able to see it. I don't want it to fade into the image. I don't want a shadow, kind of that shadow in the background can take a bit away from the font as well. So you just want something very clean. Remember, pitch decks are very clean. I do think Danny has a good choice of images in the actual log line, the quality images for the deck that can be used throughout the deck instead of the images or that office or studio that is behind the images. Another thing that stood out to me with this deck is that it said inspiration. And one of the things when you are working with executive producers and studios is we know it as comps.
Terminology is important.
Yeah, terminology is really important, and it definitely sets the tone of the person, whoever is reading your deck is also trying to get to know who you are as a filmmaker, and your deck also articulates who your team is. And so having inspiration versus comps there, I would actually change that. What did you think about the comps that are listed? They felt a little different in
Yeah,
genre.
then yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say if this is satire, then do they actually go with these?
Another slide that I would not include in the core deck
Format.
format.
No.
You know, your format does not need to be included. Remember, things are going to change, they will change, and you don't want to set yourself into anything. And also, you just don't want, it's not as important to knowing the synopsis and the log line and who the characters are. The format you will get to once you get, listen, the goal is to get the contract signed. The goal is to get the deal done. And the format, all of that will come later. So it really kind of takes away from the deck. And also the images that are used on the format, I actually like and can be used throughout the deck. So I definitely think some good quality images are in there. And the synopsis, I think it's more just about the placing of the images and the choosing of how you want to for us to see this story. We have some images behind, and then we have some in the forefront. So I think it kind of takes a little away from what I'm looking at, along with the font and it being white kind of blends into the table in the boardroom. All right, George, what did you notice right here?
They said the characters, the protagonists, antagonists. Again, things that, you know, do we use that in pitch decks or not?
No, you don't. You know, you want
Mhm,
them to be able to read your characters and tell who is who. That
mhm.
is, the most important part about the storytelling. And we're going to get into Christy right now. I know she's waiting. Having a good story helps with the pitch deck and being able to articulate the character. So your EPs and your studios, they know what a protagonist is. And so they don't need you to kind of explain that. They want to be able to read the description and say, oh, this is who that character is. And the same with the themes. That slide is definitely not needed for the core pitch deck, nor are locations. Remember who
Yeah,
we're speaking to in this deck. Locations, this may feel more for production crew to kind of get them familiar with what some of the locations kind of lookbook-ish
a
would
lookbookish, yeah.
would feel like. So you have a few things going here, pitch deck and kind of lookbook. And again, the budget is fine. It just depends on who the audience is. And images that slides that just have images and don't necessarily serve a purpose or give me more context to what the story about just creates more slides for the person to be able to go through. All right. So what I
And
noticed,
again, it's a kind of lookbookish. Like
yeah.
these are shots that we're going to use. But that's not here for the pitch deck.
And what I noticed was meet the writers. Sometimes people don't have an entire crew together, so that's fine. I didn't, sometimes people just have the EP, the screenwriter is the EP and the director. So list that. But if you do have someone else on board, it is so beneficial to have them onto your deck. It does look like you are getting all of the pieces together. And so just again, be very careful of your image choice that you are using when you are wanting the execs and networks to really kind of get a feel of what this project is about. The images were high in quality, but they were not cohesive enough for me to feel like this film was about those actual images.
Mhm.
And
I,
thank you.
I would say the same thing about the writer. Is this about the writer directing, or is this about the writer
Yeah.
or being on camera? So that just one image of her is perfect and fine. That would be, uh, what I would say that would be that, and that center image speaks more to the writer. The rest of it is,
Feel director-ish.
yes, something else other than
Yeah,
the
and
writer.
also which can, when you're dealing with executives, in studios, they have people in mind, and you don't give them this thought of, oh, she may possibly want to direct. Because if a studio has a director and they want to give you 200K for your project, you may not be able to actually direct this project. And, that's up to you if you decide to or not. But again, you want to make sure what you're conveying to your investors and your production and studios is that, hey, I'm open to being very flexible, and that means not including the format and different things like that. Some themes that may change, locations that may change. But I want you to know specifically what the story is about, and if you stick to the core, then you will snag them. Trust me, they will hit you up and say, can you send us a budget? They will start asking questions. You just want to focus on your main parts. Okay. All right. We are over. Anything else you want to add to that, George?
I don't, in the interest of time.
And I am actually going to really run through this. This was a pitch deck that was sent. I thought this pitch deck was really nice. It was a pitch deck that was done differently. And again, remember that pitch decks are your opportunity to be creative. They can be on a PDF document. They can be in a different format in that PDF document. It doesn't have to be 8.5 by 11. You can figure out a way to really be creative, especially if it ties into the storyline. Um,
That was a question that someone asked. Does it always have to be landscape, or can it be a different way? So thank you for answering that question.
And so Gabrielle sent this pitch deck, and I actually thought instantly, I want to read. I want to know what this deck is about. It feels very fun. all of the images and things that are matching the deck, it feels like it goes along with the film already. I feel like from an EP standpoint, I am, looking at a person that understands marketing, that understands the creativity, that understands just so many things just from your first image. And so that's why it's so important that you guys really do take some time in your pitch decks to design them, to make them fun, to make them creative, to make them stand out, to make them different, because that's what filmmaking is about. It's about that creative component. And so this deck was really fun. I pulled it up. I was like, oh my God, I want to know what it's about. And that is what you want EPs to feel and see when they actually get your pitch deck. So I thought it was a very cool pitch deck. It is definitely done in a different format. The log line and the synopsis is still here. The inspiration around the project and the character, which he gave some options I thought was super cool. The pilot. And guys, we're gonna start wrapping up in a second. So this deck I felt was very fun. It was a TV series. What did you think, George?
All right. I'm sure the question, one question that is going to be asked is, why is inspiration okay here in this deck and not in the other deck? Was that in, can you scroll back to the inspiration page?
That is one of the things that I was going to point out. Well,
Okay.
3 things for this deck. One is the inspiration. It's a very fun deck. I love it. It's fun. The inspiration does not have to be in this deck, especially your core deck. This would be more towards like maybe grants or in that area. I wouldn't even kind of include this for studios. And not to be funny, sometimes studios just really don't care about your inspiration. They're just really trying to, get to the money of it. And these are slides that you will add as you guys continue your conversation with studios and executive producers. So inspiration would be the slide that I would take off of this deck. And more so, and the second thing with this deck, even though it's a very fun deck, I do love the deck, is making sure that I'm able to really navigate the deck, that I know what is on every page. That's the thing with the pitch decks. You're able to see, okay, I'm looking at the cast, I'm looking at the crew, I'm looking at the synopsis, because if I needed to scroll really quickly to see where everything is at, I want to be able to get straight to it. So even having a cast, the title put here for the cast, I would change that. So yes, inspiration, making sure that everything is listed as titled so I can know exactly where I'm at on the deck. I do think the deck is a tad bit too long as far as the words go. So the other thing that I would do is condense it a bit more, just to make sure that I'm getting to the meat of the series.
A lot of time is spent on the pilot, and you want to shorten that just a little bit.
And I think it's a very nice deck to work with. One of the things I noticed was, where was my final page? I didn't have a contact. And that's very unfortunate, because if I wanted to reach out, I don't know who to actually contact in regards to this deck. And so it's that simple to lose an investor, a studio who is not about to take out any extra time to Google you and find you on Instagram. So these are my 3 examples for decks. Anything else you would like to add before I close out on that?
Nope. In the interest of time, let's go.
Really quickly, guys, I want to introduce Christy. She is a screenwriter. She's actually working on a project with me. And so I'm so excited about, did it come up yet? I'm trying to make sure it comes up.
You talking about the
All right,
slide
Christy.
page? Yeah.
Hi, Christy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing good. Thank you so much for joining. So sorry it went over.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right.
So I am so glad that you are here. I can't find my presenter window. Let's see.
That's okay.
Can you introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are, where you're located,
Sure.
what it is that you do?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Christy, as she said. I am a screenwriter, a script doctor, which is basically a fancy way of saying editor for scripts. But I do also edit books, and I have done ghostwriting for books. Been a professional writer for close to 20 years now. Can't believe that I can actually say that. Which is even more great is to say that I'm a working screenwriter, which is a harder thing for some people to say. But I'm very lucky that I have folks like Michelle in my life, and that I guess people actually like the words that I write. So that works out pretty well. Um, what was the other question you asked me? Oh, where am I? I'm in Atlanta. Not from Atlanta, just live in Atlanta. I'm actually from the Washington, D.C. area. But I've lived in Atlanta a very long time. I like the up and coming film scene that's here. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I feel like I'm in the right place at the right time. And working on some very cool projects. Like Michelle said, I've been working on one together right now that I just finished the script at 3 o'clock this morning.
I got the email, girl. I got the email.
So very excited. I have no idea what it says at this point, but we're just gonna go with it. But writing is my life. I love it. And I feel like to do this, to be on the grind, as some of you as screenwriters know, you're not always getting paid for this work. So you have to love it in order to do it. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining and just agreeing to be a part of it. I love you, Chrissy. I've been, I was so happy to finally work with you, and now that we're working together, and I got the script this morning, I believe. I'm so excited to read
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I had, man, I'll tell you, this has been fun. This has been fun. It's been fun to work on this project with you and just you know, think about all the possibilities that can happen later. So
Yeah,
great,
of course.
great stuff.
And the reason why I brought Christy on, because I'm always contracting out screenwriters for different projects. And it was such a pleasure just to work with you on this previous project. Your process into treatments and breaking down these characters were so amazing. And I'm always like blown away when I see something. I'm like, oh my God, this is gold. So Christy is working on a rom-com for us on a project that I'm working on, myself and two other executive producers. And one of the things was one of the tasks that Christy sent over a film treatment. And so usually I get a film treatment just in the regular, like just an email, nothing too fancy, nothing too much. But your film treatment really stood out to me. And I think it really aligned with helping some executive producers, studios, or people that are in this, production space be able to get pitch decks created. It is a difference in an executive producer actually creating a pitch deck and the writer actually having that voice of the pitch deck. So I was so excited to see how you actually formatted your film treatment, which makes it so simple for executive producers or studios that need to get a pitch deck just to kind of pass it right off to the designer. So I kind of want to show off your film treatment and just kind of want to talk to you about why, the film treatment is so important to you. And also, I said this earlier, the story is so important when you're talking about these pitch decks and making sure that the characters, the synopsis, the acts, what is about. And sometimes the EPs can't necessarily articulate that as well as the actual screenwriter. So I just kind of want to know, just the first question, your process to your film treatment and what made you decide, was this like something that you do for all of your clients, or I'll pull it up for everyone to see.
Okay, cool. Well, I actually, because every project is different, I kind of approach the creation of treatments different. Sometimes I'm given the treatment and I just sort of feed off of that. But sometimes, like in the case of our project together, um, we had to I had to create the treatment, or we were recreating a story that was already created. So it's like I had to sort of redo the story based upon the goals of the film. So the way I'm a visual person, and I also know that, and this is a terrible thing to say, but people don't like to read. They really don't. So when you were saying, keep the wordiness off the pitch deck, no truer words were ever spoken. Your word choice is important. Um, and yeah, like what George said, just long enough to convey the message. Brief is better, but you have to be detailed in that. You have to be detailed in the brevity. So the thesaurus will be your best friend in finding good words to use. But I'm saying, I'm a visual person. I like when I look at something, like I can't, like, this word is tiny on my screen, so I can't really read it, but I see that it's clean. I see that it's like boom, boom, boom. I can see title font, body font, title font. I can see that there's, just like you were saying, for the pitch deck, to have something to go to. Like if I want to know the themes, I can just scroll right to that, that heading. So always breaking each thing out with headings. Now, treatments, you can look up how to write a treatment, and everything that you find will be different. Some people say, 20 things are in a treatment. Some people will say 5 things are in a treatment. Some people will say a treatment is 1 page long. Some people say a treatment can be 10 pages long. It's all true. I think it all just depends on why you have the treatment, who's going to read it, why. Some people, if you might get a project from someone and they're like, I need you to do a 1-pager. That basically is a treatment that is a 1 page long, where you got to do all the things in 1 page.
That is hard. That
And
is hard.
Man, let me tell you, or well, as Michelle and I know, when you get a little box that says, oh, do a log line in 50 characters. What?
Yep.
So mental gymnastics you will do. I think for a project that I did for a series, they only wanted a 3-page, show Bible, or that's like another name for a treatment too, for a series, I guess. It's all kind of interchangeable depending on it. It really just depends on who needs it, who wants it, who's looking at it. Even though this was this treatment was in-house, so to speak. It was in-house. I still made it pretty for my people. And I want to say, Michelle, it was more for me than you. Not because I like it to be pretty, but I like it to make sense for me, because what do I do when I'm writing the script? I refer back to the treatment often. So if it don't make sense to me, it's not gonna make sense to nobody. And then I also refer back to the treatment because there are times where, the story takes me, to a different place, and I'm going to have to revise the treatment to go along with the script I wrote, because nothing's worse than reading a treatment and then you get the script and you're like, well, that's not what you said was going to happen. So, it just needs to be easy on the eyes. Don't do, like you were saying for the other, don't do a whole bunch of different fonts, 2 fonts, a title font and a body font. That's all you need. You'll kind of see in the middle, can you scroll up just a little bit where the themes are? Themes, you don't always have to do themes and treatments, but if somebody
I usually don't see themes and treatments, but when I saw the theme in your treatment, I was like, this is perfect. Like as an EP, it's like, oh my God, like it helps me with the grant applications. It helps me with communicating with sponsors and product placement, and most importantly with designers, when they know the theme of, the film, that they're able to help with those images, and really with font choice as well, because all of these things matter. So I thought the themes included in your treatment just for what you sent over to us was perfect.
Mhm.
Not only just from an EP standpoint, but also a designer standpoint. So I loved it.
Yeah, and I thought doing it sort of like changing it to be center scale. I mean, center aligned, just sort of made it pretty, so to speak. I did the key characters. That's basically a table, 2-column table. This was done in Google Docs. Nothing special, nothing fancy. You can do it in Google Docs. You can do it in what do you call it, Microsoft Word. I did it like this. And yeah, I hate that that's not balanced. That's bugging me. But I did it like this because I didn't want it to be a lot of pages. I didn't want to, like I said, people don't like to read. They like to skim. So making your treatment and even your pitch decks for that matter, skimmable, because people don't like to read and they're visual. Most people are visual. Like with the pitch decks, it's having the bold colors and the uniform fonts. I love the example that you showed, Michelle, with the rom-com where the pictures were all on the same side for every slide. I mean, I know that sounds boring and cookie cutter, but let me tell you, people don't like to read. They don't want to be confused. They don't want to have to look all over the page for something. Same thing with the treatment. So I didn't want to have this treatment be 10 pages long. I was like, let's try to do it in 3 or 4, maybe 5. I think this one was 5. But getting the point across. And then with the treatment, I also kind of stack the information. And that's by design. So starting with the log line, the shortest thing, then the next shortest thing, a little synopsis, characters, themes, whatever. Then the next longest thing is the actual story. That's the story. And when you tell the story, you can either break it up by acts or not. I just did that to help. I don't really know if those, if those act breaks are correct or not, but we're just gonna go with it. But this is the longer story. And also with treatments, they want to know the whole story. You're not trying to intrigue them. You're not trying to tease them. They want what's going to happen. All the spoilers, who dies, who kills them, all the jump scares, whatever, depending on your genre. It is the equivalent of when you sit down with someone and they say, "Oh, you saw that movie?" "Yeah, I did. Let me tell you what it's about." "Okay, so it's about this dude and he does this, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and you wouldn't believe what happened next, and then this happens," and that's basically what this is broken down. If you want to think about how to write a treatment, write it like that. It is, I mean, the ending, well, the big part of the treatment, the story from start to finish, as brief as you can possibly get it, but think of it as an and then story. You're telling your homeboy, your homegirl about this movie, and they're like, "I'm not going to see it, so you can spoil it." "Okay, well, here we go. It's about this dude," and just go for it. And I usually write that first because that's the whole story. And then I go to the short stuff.
Gotcha.
I do synopsis, and then I take the synopsis and make the log line. I'll pick out the themes based upon maybe some of the word choices that I use. I used, death or anxiety or something like that in what I wrote in the longer part. And that creates the shorter things. And then I usually do the characters last.
Gotcha.
Because I kind of have to think about them a little bit. We have to, and those, I don't get into too much detail. It's more like a summary of their qualities and what their part is in the story, as much as possible. You get more of that in the deck, but again, the treatment is like, a treatment can be a precursor to a deck, or it can just be, some people don't want to read the deck, they want to read the treatment. It's just crazy. This industry is so fickle, it's unbelievable.
But I think with having your treatment like this for the EP, you have both options. Whether you read the treatment, you can send them this doc versus read the pitch deck. It's really about accommodating whoever you are speaking to. And oftentimes people just send me random decks and I'm like, you got to know what that person is asking, what they're looking for. And again, a treatment, this format may just be perfect for the studio or an exec. They don't want to go through all of the visuals and the images and the colors. And so
Mhm.
having this is a real vital piece to even the pitch deck, the screenwriting process, and everything else.
Mhm.
It's the heart
Mhm.
of the actual project.
Yes. And I recommend, and we kind of talked about that with, you kind of talked about that with the pitch decks, is having different versions to go to different people. So it's almost like creating templates for yourself. So this one that we're looking at here is probably like the longest one that I would do, with everything. You may get someone that says, like I said, somebody like, send me a one pager. So basically I take what's on here and just cinch it up to one page as much as possible. So that means I might take out the characters. They might not want, if they want a one pager, they don't want character descriptions. If they want a one pager, they want title, they want log line, synopsis, maybe themes, and contact information. That's pretty much what they want. If they want a one pager, that's it.
I get excited about one pagers because they're the one pages gets you excited. Like they just want to get straight to it. All of the
That's
extras,
me.
they're not
That's
concerned about.
Yeah,
That's the
that's me.
important part. You just said something very important about, you get excited about a one pager. That means your one pager needs to be exciting. That means you have to use the exciting language. You have to boom, pow, pow with whatever you're saying about your story. I'm, as you know, my tagline is chatterbox, so obviously I talk a lot. So I'm very long-winded. I have to practice brevity all the time. By the way, Michelle, the script is 137 pages long. Just want to let you know.
Okay.
I know we're gonna cut it. But that's kind of my process too. I write it all out. I write the long one. I use all the words. And then I go back and say, okay, people don't like to read. How can I cinch this up to be the long version, but not the long, boring version? How can I, tie up these sentences? And how can I use words that make it more exciting, that make people want to keep reading my and then story? I make it intriguing, if it's supposed to be funny, you make it funny. You say funny things. If it's supposed to be serious, if it's supposed to be a thriller, you want to, act like you're covertly telling somebody something, and so think about words that convey your story. So you can get creative with the treatment. It doesn't have to be a boring book report. I think even if nobody cares if it's a boring book report, I say do something to jazz it up, even if it's put your characters in a table like this, do your themes sort of in a poetic type style. Another thing that I did for a series, I think I have like three versions of that. I have a very long version, and then I have the short version that that I had to submit with the pilot that actually got me a second round nod at Austin Film Festival. So my story is about the first Black FBI agent.
Mhm.
And it's a true story, but it's a narrative nonfiction slash fiction. I mean, narrative nonfiction slash fiction sort, because there's things, everybody in the story is dead, so you kind of have to fill in the blanks with some creative stuff. I made my treatment look like an FBI file.
Yep.
So yeah, I had the watermark confidential. So like it looks like somebody stamped confidential on it.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So if I did, if I wanted to get even more jiggy with it, I might have even made the background look like a folder or something, put a paper clip on it or something like that, So you can get cute with your
I think
treatment.
you should get cute and creative,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
when so many people are just seeing just the regular docs come through every day. And to get that
Mhm.
one that just shouts and screams and it pops and it's something very unique, I think I recommend being creative. Like that is what we are in this filmmaking space,
Yep. Yep. So don't again, write out the book report because you need the words, but think about who's asking for it. No, I think somebody's asking about photos on a treatment. Nope. It is all words. No photos, unless you want to do a logo, which I did. I created a little spy logo for mine. And then of course, like I had the little top secret thing stamped, but you don't want to overwhelm. You don't want to overwhelm it. I only used one font, and that was the regular Courier, because this is a story that was told in the 20s and 30s. So they probably had just, typewriters, ching, 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 ching. So typewriter font. That's all I needed, because I'm conveying the story. I don't want to use a whole bunch of scripty things or whatever, because that wasn't alive and well back then. I'm trying to put people in the mood, in the time frame of when this story was told.
Because all of
So
that matters. The font,
all of it matters.
all of
All of
that,
it matters.
the color temperature, the
Mhm.
images, all of that matters. Whether you're doing, shadows on your font, does that,
Mhm.
relate to the story?
Mhm.
It really does. And that pitch deck, I feel sometimes people get scared because it's like, this is the document that needs to have like this official information. No, it needs to be creative. It needs to be
Mhm.
fun. It needs to scream that this project has a team and a crew ready that just needs
Mhm.
to check. Honestly,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the tone of it. Like, okay, again, like you were saying, some things don't need to be said. Genre, I think on a treatment, a genre needs to be said, because you can't like visually create the genre, and the treatment's a little bit different. It serves a different purpose than the pitch deck. But again, the tone of it, bring it out in your writing. And if you're not sure, you can always hire a writer to write it for you.
Always hire
um,
Christy. She
plug. Shameless plug. But no, seriously, I mean, that's true. If you're worried about it, and you're worried if what you're writing is boring, you might just say, here's my and then story, but I'm not feeling it. I'm not punching it up. I'm not using the right words, because I'm not a writer. You might be a director, you might be a producer, not necessarily a writer. So you want to put your best foot forward, and you're not really sure. Um, you're not really sure that what you're writing is that people are going to be picking up what you're putting down. So you want to try to get as creative as possible, but still very simple, very very straightforward, very classy with it. Convey the tone in the type of writing. If you're trying to, if it's horror, you want to get the hair standing up on the back of their neck a little bit if you can. um or at least give them the idea, like, ooh. So how I like to write my treatments is, like, especially when I'm writing them for directors, I want the director to see it in their heads or the producers to see it in their heads when they're reading it. Like, I can totally see it. So you don't have to necessarily write, super scary or anything like that, but give enough description and persuasiveness in it, to where whoever's reading it goes, "Ooh, this is good," and they're watching it in their head, and seeing, "Oh my gosh, I totally know what I'm going to do for this particular part of the story." They're already making the movie before they
And you
said
want
yes.
them to make the movie, especially the studios and executive producers, because that's where you get the check. You want them to say, I need to see this film. And then
Hmm.
that's where
Hmm.
they sign on that. So,
Yeah.
all right,
So
Chris,
again,
go
it's
ahead.
up to interpretation. It's up to interpretation. But you want to have the basics, your title, genre, who wrote it, who's directing, if you know all that stuff first, your log line, a summary or a synopsis, depending on what people want. That's the other thing. Don't be afraid to ask. Like, if someone says, I need treatment for something. Okay, well, what do you want in your treatment?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Don't be afraid to ask what they want to know.
And same with the pitch deck. If someone is
Yeah.
asking you for the deck, hey, like what are their interests? Are there investors?
Mhm.
Are they looking to pass it over to studios? What is it that you would like to see in this deck? It is nothing wrong with asking that. Trust, it is better to ask than to not ask, and then to not have it included, and you could have asked. So it's okay to say, hey, I want to send this deck off to you guys. I want to send this treatment. What are you looking for? Or is anything specific that you would need or you
Yeah.
want?
Hmm.
And that is what you want to include. If they say nothing, you want to include based off of who you're speaking to. They're an
Hmm.
EP, kind of, position it in that way, but ask for sure.
Totally ask, because they might just be like, "Oh, just give me a quick blurb."
Yeah.
One page, 2-page treatment. That's it. Don't go overboard. Because if they said they want, that means they don't want to read.
Yeah.
They don't want to read. There's a reason why some people just say, send me your log line.
Yeah.
They make a
Gotta
decision based off
accommodate
of a log line.
gotta accommodate everybody you're reaching out to. You don't know who you're
Mhm.
gonna snag along the way.
Yep.
Christy, let everyone know where to find you, what type of work you do, and if you're available for work now and all of that good stuff.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, on all the socials, I'm Chatterbox CGC. Pretty much everything. I'm mostly on Instagram and Threads. I kind of have given Twitter X the boot a little bit, but I still kind of post there because there are some people when I remember. LinkedIn is just my name, Christy Glasgow, and I forget to post there too. But at least my whole life story is on LinkedIn. My website is chatterboxchristycreative.com. Again, whole life story plus projects that I've worked on. I need to update it because I have won a few awards that are not on there. I need a bingo card for the work that I've done because I have worked in nearly either writing it full out or editing it, being a script doctor. Pretty much every genre that you can think of, and anything from a web series all the way to a feature film, 30-minute series, half-hour series, uh gosh, a little bit of everything, and genre be damned. I actually like see it as a challenge when someone gives me something I haven't done yet. um it's really fun because I get to tap into that. I get to do research. I get to watch some more films and TV shows to try to get into it. But like I said, I've been a writer my whole life. I have a pretty creative brain. There really isn't much that I don't write. I did a very long stint in marketing, so I understand this whole pitch deck thing and all that. And that's where, kind of my sense of knowing that people don't like to read, uh, comes from. And I love visuals. I love for things to draw your eye in, and that initially makes you want to read it. Type of work I'm doing right now, it's really funny. I have these like these pockets of time. Like I had like a whole ghostwriting phase, and then like right after the ghostwriting phase is like that was the only kind of work that was coming to me. Not that I was seeking it out, that was the only kind of work. And then after the ghostwriting thing, a whole bunch of editing work came to me and nothing else. Now I'm in the screenwriting phase. It's like everybody's coming to me with screenplays. Okay, let's do it. So right now, like I said, we're working on a project with Michelle that's kind of winding up at the end of the month. um I'm open to projects. I'm open to talking about projects right now. A lot of people are talking to me right now. So that's a blessing that I have people talking to me, but nothing has been concretely said yet. So I'm open to talking to anybody about what they want. I mean, if we want to talk treatments some more, I love being a mentor to folks. I love, helping folks out, just like how you're doing today, Michelle, gracing people with this blessing of helping them get their pitch decks together. Um, I love this stuff. So I'm always here to help, but yes, but also here for hire.
Thank you so much, Christy. It's been a pleasure working with you. The screenwriter, you are on point. I'm talking about treatments, drafts. Like it has been
My
amazing.
character sketches. Oh gosh. Well,
Listen,
that's just it's just visual. I'm just a visual person. I like for people to see my vision.
it has
So
been a pleasure so much that we're getting ready to talk about a second project. So you guys, make sure you follow Christy. If you need any work for hire, screenwriting, editing, she is available, warm spirit to work with. I appreciate you so much for coming on today and gracing us. Thank you so much.
oh, you're welcome. It was a pleasure. I was so glad that you asked me. I'm happy to do it anytime.
Of course. So just hang around for a few minutes because I think we got some questions. And
Okay.
so maybe there's some for you as well.
Sure.
Thank you, Christy. All
No
right,
problem.
we're gonna open up to Q&A so we can wrap this up, guys, because like Christy, I could talk filmmaking all day. And so
Yep.
it's time to wrap this up. All right. So we have some questions.
Yes, we have lots of questions, but because people have been silent for so long, I would like for you to jump in right now, turn your cameras on, and ask the question that you have. I have, as best I could, recorded all of them, and possibly we'll put out a Q&A that you should be able to receive it in your emails. If there's something that we did not get to, but by all means, let us know who you are, and then what your question is, and we will answer it.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Umita from India. I had a specific question. Usually, when I make text, there is world, tone, and style, themes, and central conflict, which always come in my research that, we need to put this, we need to put this. This has been a part of all my decks. But when I understand this core pitch deck, I feel like, yeah, whatever was listed makes sense. But there might be some spaces where people would want to read the world, tone, and style, themes, and central conflict. Where would that space be? Like targeted pitch decks? If it is targeted pitch decks, then where exactly? I'm sure not the investors, but is it the EP and the studios or the sponsors or the grants? Where should I place them? If at all I should place them.
And it was for the themes and conflict, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, themes and
Yes.
conflict and world, tone, and style. Like
So
these are the 5 things.
All together. I put those things on the same page. If you create a slide for that, I would put all those on the same page.
Okay.
And usually when you're doing like your themes and conflicts, they are more grants based for business grants and organizations. Yeah. They want to know the type of social impact, who your audience is, the theme of your project, and if it aligns with their brand and their organization. So grants are usually very heavy on knowing exactly what your project is about because you're representing them as well. So include that on your grant slide.
And if the world, like suppose if you're doing a very sci-fi setup or a dystopian setup or something that is not your current ongoing setup, right? So wouldn't the world be very important in your core pitch?
Mm,
No?
What was
I'm
you?
thinking
What would be very important? What was the word that you said?
the world. She's saying the world. Is it important to establish the world? Like if you're doing like a sci-fi or dystopian or something like that, is it important? I would say if you're using the right visuals
Yeah.
and the right words, that's gonna
Yeah.
be obvious.
The tone
Okay.
and of your overall pitch deck and presentation should convey that this is in a world that's outside of the norm.
Got it. Instead of writing it down, rather have
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Show it
Thank
to
you
them.
so much.
It's
People
a
don't like
visual
to
Thank you
read.
medium.
so
I'm
much.
telling you, they don't like to read. Don't give them a lot to read. They don't
No.
want to do it.
It's a visual medium.
Understood. Yes.
And then
Thank you so
also,
much.
I'll make sure I include so that you can see because it's so much to talk about. But I do have a sci-fi pitch deck example, so I'll send that so you can kind of see the feel and the vibe of how it articulated sci-fi without having to actually list it.
That would be great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, yeah. Sorry to interrupt. First of all, you mentioned that you have a sci-fi pitch deck like just now. So would it be possible to like mass send that? Because I think my most probable like project that's hard sci-fi, so that would be really useful.
Yeah, I'm going to send the recap of this to everyone along with resources and those links. So everyone will receive it. So I'll make sure I include the sci-fi deck for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And oh, sorry. Yeah, one more question. For the resources, do those include like websites where it lists financial information when you're trying to pitch to investors? So websites with that
The
type of stuff?
resources are just like IMDb, places to kind of help you with the logo generator. So things like that, but not financial. No.
Okay. Are there any websites you recommend for that?
When you're looking for grants or when you're looking for investors, or does it matter?
Doesn't matter, just either.
Okay, so I can include some, but just off the top, Film Daily, they do grants, and I recommend signing up for their newsletter because they send out their grants weekly, I believe. And you have
Okay.
like Slated that kind of really works on the investment side as far as funding. So I'll include those links on the resource for you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Hey, I got my hand raised. Can I jump
Robin,
in?
yes, sir. Robin, go ahead.
How you doing, sir? How you doing? Hey,
Good.
Michelle, good to see you. I will be in Atlanta hopefully within 3 weeks, so hopefully we can get some FaceTime. My question is, it's a bit ambiguous or open-ended about the pitch deck for essentially securing investment. There was an example deck and there was a slide. I think it was the two women that I don't recall the name of that story. But there was a small pie chart on budget, and I was hoping, I don't know if this is something I'd have to schedule with either one of you individually to get more of a, okay, here's like a sanitized slide about actual figures or distribution vectors to how we can actually recuperate investment, because for me, I'm very skeptical. So it's like, if I have a slide and I go, okay, here's the return on investment, it's just going to magically happen. You just have to trust us. It's like, could you just expand a little bit more on how to really, because I don't have a finance background. I doubt a lot of my peers, I don't know if they come from finance or, we're not necessarily the MBA crowd. So if you have any additional points, or if you could just expand on that a bit more, I'd appreciate it.
So when it comes to the return of investment, I definitely don't recommend winging numbers, especially talking to investors. That's the biggest way to set yourself up with them. So I suggest include a return of investment when you actually know what those numbers will be. So sometimes if people already have distribution deals, or if you have things already in place where you can in real time say, this is what it is, this is what our contract is, this is what we're getting, then of course include that. Other ways to kind of suggest return of investment is where you're planning on landing with distribution, where you're planning on landing with film festival. So the return of investment also sometimes it's just not the financial part, but it can be as well. But that helps build this world of, if you're thinking about moving this into festival world and depending on the project, in an investor or studio mind, especially if it's a Sundance project, that can possibly get a theatrical release. So it's not so much about like the return of investment of adding a number or putting something to say, okay, you're going to get $20,000 back, but it's about building this world where someone can kind of believe in it and see the bigger vision. Again, when you're sending off your decks to execs, to studios, they do this every day. So that is why you want to make sure it's visually appealing and you're really building this world, because when I get decks, I'm literally I'm adding up numbers. Like I'm adding up budget. I'm looking at locations. Like my mind is a ticking bomb. Like, and then when I get to the budget sheet, if I get there and I see someone listed 75, I'm like, ain't no way this is 75. Like I have listed, I've read your act 1, your 2, your 3. So just really understand that the investors, the producers, the studios, they're very aware of a lot of things as far as what it looks like on what can a return of investment be. They may have the theatrical, connections to do a release. So if that is listed in your distribution strategy, then they're thinking, okay, this is a way for me to get my return of investment. So sometimes it's just not actually listing the number, but it's building the world so they can kind of figure out which areas or how do they want to monetize in different buckets.
All right,
Thank
we
you.
have Tyler. I'm glad that answered your question. Tyler, yes, sir.
Hi, I was curious mostly about just a few things with the core deck. I've recently made one from scratch on my own, so it's not as graphical as the others. But when it comes to the characters, one of the questions that I have is if you're using a lot of, like, say, non-actors, or you're hoping that people will visualize them while they're reading the character descriptions, should you include like very basic physical descriptors of them?
Yeah.
Things like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, and I'll let Christy kind of answer this because she did our treatment. So keeping physical, sometimes people stay away from age as well. You'll notice that once you read script, so many things change when they get to the studios and investors' hands. They know people, they have contracts, memo deals, so many things. So you know, once you stay away from specifics, it allows you, and it looks as if you will be open to possibilities. And that's honestly what, you know, executive producers are hoping for. You're open to possibilities that, you know, your crew may change, the talent may change, the location may change. And so that does give off that. And then so Christy, you know, when you did our treatment, you didn't include that. So thank you.
Yeah, I didn't at first until, you know, we talked about it and then we knew what we wanted, or we actually had a discussion about the characters, because just me personally, whenever I write, I sometimes don't see my characters. Sometimes I just know them as people. I don't really know what they look like until the end, which is kind of funny. I got to send you guys an email. I thought of somebody for Neve. So I don't really know what my people look like maybe until the end. But I think if you know the story is about a Black woman, then you want to say that. If you know that you want a certain character to be Asian or Latino, say that. But if it's left up to interpretation for every other character, I think age is really the only thing that you need to say. Is like, we need to know, you know, the generation that these people are in. And then I think when you describe their personalities, and that's something that I tell I've taught screenwriting to some high school kids, and what I've told them about describing their characters is use their personality as their description. Don't use physical appearance unless you know. If you know that they're Black, say that they're Black. If you know that they're 7 feet tall, say that they're 7 feet tall.
Right.
Say those things. Say the things that are very important to the story. If it's not important to the story that they are any particular race or culture or anything like that, leave it out, because then that means the best actor for your project will get chosen for that part. But I would say use more personality. So if this person is supposed to be effervescent and bubbly or whatever, say those kinds of things. Describe their role in the story with descriptions based on their personality. And that will give people a visual. Sometimes doesn't give me a visual, but is there some people will give some people a visual of who to choose.
Okay. I also
It
have like
keeps it brief. It also keeps it brief.
Of course. I also have just one more quick little question, which has to do with the comparables. When you're writing down things like what the budget for that film was and maybe what the film grossed, should you also add in a little bit that says maybe a percentage, what their profit margin was, and what so that people can have an idea of what to expect from a film of that you're going after? I've seen that in a few pitch decks, but I'm just curious of the opinion on that.
No, it's not important. You know, it's not important to the deck. It's not important to, hey, I need you to. One thing we know that it's going to be money involved. We know that it's profit is loss. These are the things that we know. It's just, is your narrative, is your log line, is this marketable? Is the story sellable? Can we build an audience from it? And so these are the things that you want to concentrate on. When you start concentrating on like numbers and things like that, you're kind of leaning more towards an EP and fundraising and development and how to get money, versus I just want you to know what the story is about. And if you guys want to pick it up, then those are the things the studios and networks concern themselves with as far as numbers go. So no, I wouldn't include it in there. It's not necessary to the pitch deck.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll add to that a lot of the things that are reported as profit and loss and those kind of things may not necessarily jive with reality based on points and, you know, aftermarket, just a bunch of things that go on. So no, if you can just avoid it.
Inflation, she's right.
Inflation, yeah.
I saw that one comment.
box office and a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
That was a very good question. Very good question. Very good questions, guys.
Jazzy, I see your hand raised. Let's see the name.
Hi.
Mamita, yes.
Yes.
Oh,
I
okay.
asked before, but I have one more question.
Okay.
just trying to clarify my mind. In the core pitch deck, something about the key creatives is mentioned, the bios of your director, writer, or people attached, your team, your core team, basically present it in a way that the team looks ready. So is that something which goes for all sorts of pitch decks, like for a feature film or a short film and TV series, or in TV series, we are not really required to put that?
No, you want to include your crew and your key creatives on all of your decks if you have them to be, if they're attached to it.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
As far as you know, because in some TV series they're directed by multiple directors. It just depends. So it just depends. As far as you know, this is my team. This is my core team, and those kind of things. And if you have an idea of multiple directors coming in, then
Okay,
that
cool.
lends credibility to your ability to be flexible.
And I think just to
Thank you.
kind of emphasize a little bit more about what you said, George, it is important just to put what you know. More than likely it's going to change,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
it's going to.
For sure.
So, again, just the more you're adding there and you're putting there, it does give the feeling that you are putting some thought into your project. You have researched some directors, you have some things, or you have your own vision, at least for it, until someone else comes on and, highlights that or assists with that. So it kind of gives this full package. But, list who you have, but it will change.
I do have one more question on my mind, which is not exactly on the format of this pitch deck, but is related to the pitch deck, if you may answer. A lot of time what happens, we work with new writers. They're really, really good. It's their concept. We have even co-developed the pitch deck together and everything. And they would like it to be their project to direct, right? But they do not really have release projects at their um, end, or release projects on a platform, which would really be required. And now when we take it to a showrunner, like a bigger name to attach to the project, because the project needs some names for the project to move on, how do we balance that? How do we make that uh, I don't know, how do we meet them, like a big name and somebody who has actually done the work? Because the vision is theirs, like the project would really not work together. And um, that I feel is like a real task, being an executive producer. And but I would like to understand from people who have done this, how have they navigated this?
George, go ahead.
I'm laughing because those are always delicate conversations. They are delicate conversations. And I say to people, what's the most important thing? Is it important that you do it or that it gets done? Because if the most important thing is that you do it, then I'm gonna tell you, most often, go find your own money, go put it together yourself, because that's gonna be the easiest way to ensure that you do it. If it's that the project gets done, then we have flexibility. We have options. We can work with that. And then if it comes around that that you're the person to do it, okay. But it's easiest to find out the most important thing for them. And for some people it is, I want to do it. And that is it. And sometimes that takes years and years and years, because people say, I'm the person to do this, and that's it. Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to say, with the networks, they usually have directors lined up. They're just looking for a good story. And every project is different. If this is a passion project, this project means something to you, directing is important, then yes. But I don't want anyone to forget that we're creatives, and you have so many projects inside.
This is not the only one or the last one.
So many projects. This is not your first. This is not your last. Is this the project to get you in the door? Is this the project that maybe you can shoot, direct your second film on? Like, you really got to lay out everything. And a lot of times, especially in this indie film space, the things that we want, which is to direct, which is to have our check, and you not change our script, and you not tell us who our talent can or cannot be, is sometimes what we can't get with our first project. And it's not to discourage you. It's, you're going to get there eventually. So I always just tell filmmakers too, like, take on some of those projects that, you may have wanted to direct, but you couldn't direct, even if you were the writer. Take it. You're gonna create more. You're gonna do more. You are a creative. You are here to create. You have stories inside of you. So just always evaluate what the project is and then how it can elevate you and what it means to you. And then that'll help you make decisions, because sometimes it's also good to be, letting the network get it all messed up. Like, all right, y'all go off and have fun, and I'm gonna sit right here and then write down all the errors, and then I'll know what to do next, So just, look at every project differently. Is you come to it differently with a pitch deck, with a treatment, with cast, with crew. So just kind of base your, where you are and make those decisions and then kind of where you want to go. Yeah.
This is helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I'm not cutting you all off, but we do want to respect your time. I have recorded as many, all the questions that I have seen, and so we have those. And again, this is information that we can follow up with you on.
Okay.
And by all means, if you want to book a session with Michelle to get consultation or anything like that, she is available for that. And is client work, sorry. And so we appreciate you. Thank you. And I'll let Michelle wrap it up, but we do have all your questions recorded. If we did not get to them, then we'll put them together in the doc.
All right, George, thank you for cutting me off, because I will keep going. So thank you guys for attending the pitch deck. Again, like George said, if you guys want to book a one-on-one consultation, you can. We can sit down, we can talk about what you want to do, help you out with resources. I've had some people on this call that I've had one-on-ones with. I see them in the room. So again, if you guys kind of want to go more in depth on what your pitch decks, feedback, review, anything filmmaking, or hire me for producing services, I am around. And Christy, tell people where to find you one more time. And
Okay. You can find me at Chatterbox CGC on all the socials, and chatterboxchristykreative.com online. Or I think if you just Google Christy Glasgow, that'll bring me up too, if you forget. But yes, and same thing, available for consultations or, screenwriter questions, because I understand it's crazy. It's a crazy world out here, and how I got here is a mystery to me too. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining, Christy. Thank you, George, for being here and getting all of these questions and doing what you do and pouring into me and to everyone on this call. And Christy is for hire, you guys. She's a beast. We about to lock in for the second project. So
That's right. Summer's over, everybody.
Almost over. So make sure you guys follow her. And for real, guys, we've been on this call for 2 hours and 10 minutes. Y'all are the real, y'all hung in there. Appreciate you guys so much. 2 hours is a lot of your time. So appreciate you guys. If you need us, we are around. Anything you want to say, George, before you leave? Follow George, y'all. He needs some followers.
Poor George.
All right.
No, I don't need followers. My profile is locked, but everybody that follows me on here, I will follow you, and I will follow you back. But
I was just gonna say, I won't take it personal if I'm on requested forever. That's fine.
No. I got you.
You can put me in the requested black hole. That's cool. I'm good.
I got. I will. Anybody that Michelle sends my way, I appreciate and I respect. So, we'll make sure that we follow you.
All right.
And answer your request.
All right, guys. Bye. We gotta go, guys.
Yes.
Okay, we gotta go home. Bye.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.